Good afternoon. We are so thrilled to have you here this afternoon, those of you who are here in Beverly Hall in person, and those of you who are joining us remotely, welcome. Welcome to this afternoon's Justice program. This is our last session in a series that the Justice Committee has put together all season long, trying to raise awareness and educate ourselves about the affordable housing crisis in Greater Collier County. We have seen property values rise, we have seen real estate go up, and for those of us who are homeowners, we think, oh, this is great, I have more equity in my home, but it has a very, very detrimental effect on our community, and especially those in lower socioeconomic statuses. And all season long, we've been looking at how this affordable housing crisis has affected different demographics. And today, we're going to hear about how it's affecting children, and specifically children who are homeless. I think all of us can agree that children are some of the most sacred and beloved members of our communities, and we as adults have a responsibility to care for them. There's no such thing as anyone else's child, and it is absolutely heartbreaking that here in the land of plenty, we have children who are living in very, very substandard conditions, which I will let our speakers share with you. But I'm thrilled you're here. I think I forgot to introduce myself if I haven't met you. The reason I'm standing here is because I'm Reverend Angela Wells Bean, the Minister for Congregational Care here at Naples United Church of Christ, and I have the privilege of serving as the clergy liaison to the Justice Committee. If you're new to our campus, I extend a special welcome to you. I'm thrilled you're here. This is the last in our series this season, but the Justice Committee, their work never ends, and they're working tirelessly on putting plans together for next season and what issue or issues they're going to focus on, so stay tuned for information on that. And of course, you're always welcome to join us in worship on Sunday morning at 9 or 11 a.m. And quick housekeeping thing that is very important, if you're not familiar with our campus and you need to use the facilities while you're here today, on either side, and then next to me, these doors that say exit above them, there are facilities right behind me if you need to make use of those. So glad you're here. And now I'm going to introduce our fearless, tireless, incredible leader of the Justice Committee, the chair of Justice Committee, Jen Walker, who will introduce our guest speakers.
Oh dear, always have to live up to her billing. Thank you very much, Angela, and welcome. I'm so glad you're here. I know we have some very dear friends who are with us remotely, and I'm hoping that they all got through. Angela said this is the last of our series of 6 on affordable housing crisis in Collier County, plus the big forum that we had in January in the sanctuary, which some of you probably were there to see and learn from. We looked at some efforts to build affordable housing, such as those by Habitat for Humanity and the Immokalee Fair Housing Alliance. And we heard from the executive director of the Collier County Community Land Trust. We have a board member over here now today with us. About attempts to attract developers and to find ways to fund land purchases for further development. And last month, we had an update on a project that's a unique partnership of the county government and 3 philanthropies spearheaded by the Collier Community Foundation. We heard about the importance of protecting our environment for all developments. And perhaps most important of all, we learned about the people who are so critically affected by our high cost of housing, seniors, veterans, and today, children. This weekend, the Naples Daily News published a major article on the county's homeless, copies of which, and we have them right down here, copies of which we have here. One of our speakers today is quoted about the more than 1,700 homeless children that the Collier County Public Schools is trying to help. Hami, I'm going to stumble on your name again, Hami Kappel, and we call him Hemi, to everyone, is a district liaison for McKinney-Vento program, which is also known as the Homeless Education Program, that ensures that each child of homeless individual and each homeless youth has equal access to the same free, appropriate public education, including a public preschool education, as provided to other children and youths. He's a native of a small village in southern Nepal, and one of our attendees here was having a great discussion about the Himalayas with Hemi. Hemi received his bachelor's degree from Xavier University in Ohio and a master's from American University in Washington, D.C., and you have more detail in the bios that we handed out. Before moving to Florida in 2016, he had been a program manager at Catholic Charities of St. Paul, Minneapolis, where he developed and implemented their program to address human trafficking. Hemi and his wife Emily and their 2 children and 2 dogs now live in Naples. Sheila Tabo joined Hemi in 2021 as the program's district liaison for Immokalee, as they saw the homeless population swell to more than 1,700 students they could identify who needed their services. Sheila has over 24 years' experience working with students, families, and educational institutions. She received her bachelor's degree from International College, which is now Hodges, in Naples, and a master's in Human Services Counseling from Liberty University in Virginia. And please welcome Hemi and Sheila. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you so very much for having us here. Jennifer, you are a gem. Thank you. You make me look really good. That's awesome. Yes, thank you. Before we jump in, I just want us to know that this is relating to more educational component of homelessness and what we're doing. So my name is Hemi. I'm your district liaison for Collier County Public Schools, which means with both of us, we work all of our schools, like 57 schools plus 8 charter schools. So ranging students from, I think this year we have like over 50,000 students in Collier County Public Schools. So out of that number, you will see 17, right now I think today is 1,800 students. So we're gonna quickly jump in, and please feel free to ask questions. I guess I'm gonna look at you and you will kind of let us know the format, but we're gonna just go through the presentation. Yep.
Since the only thing that's carried remotely is when it's on the mic, if you're gonna ask a question, please either raise your hand and we'll run a mic to you, or come up. I think I'll hold on to the mic.
Yeah, there you go. So to start with, Sheila, I'm going to just basically say the McKinney Vento Education Program was introduced in 1987 by the 2 senators at the time, it's McKinney and Vento, really looking at the overall well-being of transitional families. We'll talk about that one. So we have, this is fairly new team now, because I was a solo for 5-6 years until 2 years ago. We finally have a team. We have Angie Cruz, who is our coordinator, myself, Sila, who primarily works in Immokalee, which is very needed population there, and we have a specialist in our office. And today we're going to talk about background and definition of homelessness within the educational framework. We're going to talk about what does a school stability looks like in transportation, and what does the immediate enrollment means, support for academic success, and our role in some of the resources out there, and you are part of that resource list. At this moment right now, this data is 2017-18 school year. We had 1.7 million students who have been identified as experiencing homelessness in the US, who are pre-K through 12. That's a large number. Over 4 million youth and youth adult, which are like unaccompanied youth, have been experiencing homelessness. Meaning, we talked about that one, is unaccompanied youth, someone who is not in the presence of parent or legal guardian.
Okay. Good evening, and thank you again for your presence this evening, because that's the most precious thing, is your presence. My name is Sheila, and I've been working, as you read in my bio, I've been working for the school for the past 24 years, from pre-K to high school, and I've been in direct contact with a lot of our families, and I'm very privileged to have this position and to join Emmy so I can be a better support for him. The McKinney-Vento Homeless Education Program is designed to address the barriers that children and youth who are experiencing homelessness may face during enrollment, attendance, or in succeeding in school. There are also a lot of barriers to education. As we will point out, enrollment requirement. In order for anyone to register for school, they need to establish residency in Collier County. So enrollment requirement requires school record, immunization, proof of residence, and guardianships. High mobility resulting in lack of school stability and educational continuity. Lack of access to educational programs, lack of transportation, lack of school supplies and clothing, and etc., poor health, fatigue, hunger, prejudice, and misunderstanding.
In other words, basically, in order for a child to be successful in school, we need all of those components. If you are experiencing homelessness, let me go back. We operate, we meaning school system operates homelessness under McKinney-Vento Act, which is different than a HUD definition. Housing and Urban Development has their own definition of homelessness. Generally, when you talk about homelessness, a lot of people think of those who are living under the bridge and kind of panhandling and older population. Whereas we are looking at wide range of population, but focusing on pre-K through 12th grade. That's the area we're looking at. And not necessarily every single students who are identified as experiencing homelessness are living under the tree, under the roof of somebody's house. They could be living in a hotel, motel, which Sheila is gonna talk about. But I wanted to just quickly focus on this one. If a child is living with a grandparent, and the parents are also living with the grandparents, but parents do not have their own proof of address. That's a barrier because you have to have a proof of address to be registered in Collier County or any public schools. So McKinney-Vento Act waives that requirement so kiddos can be enrolled immediately so they can be participating in the school system. That's what this is really talking about. Another big one I want to talk about is lack of transportation. A lot of time, the families who are experiencing homelessness are either they don't have a transportation, a car, or they are regularly moving from one place to next, so they do not have a fixed address, which means they don't have a zone or school bus coming and getting their kiddos. So we provide the school of origin transportation, so the kiddos will be in school.
Who is eligible? Children and youth who lack a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence. Sharing the housing of others due to loss of housing, economic hardship, or similar reason. Living in motel, hotel, trailer parks, or camping ground due to lack of alternative adequate accommodation. Living in emergency or transitional shelters. Living in a public or private place not designated for regularly use as an accommodation. Living in cars, park, abandoned building, substandard housing, bus or train station, or similar setting. What is the substandard? Check utilities, infestation, mold, or endanger.
So you will see a lot during the natural disaster. I remember in Irma happened in 2017, and there were a lot of families who were displaced. There were sharing housing, meaning they're moving in with the family members. And they may lost some of the school records or birth certificate or the relevant documents for kiddos to be enrolled. If they're lucky, they were able to find a hotel, motel to stay, but yet it's a natural disaster. But under the HUD definition, again, I'm going to hone back onto is, if you're living in a hotel, motel, you're not homeless. If you're sharing a housing with somebody, you are not homeless. Homeless number does not really count as what we have as 17 plus 100 students. I think Collier right now, the pit count was what, 500, 600? Something like that. That is the number. It's conducted by the HUD. That happens once a year in a designated area where you go and you interview families or the homeless families or the individuals, and that's how they determine. That's throughout the country, right? Whereas the McKinney-Vento or educational component is ongoing process. We start at the beginning of school year, the zero homeless family or a homeless student as they're coming in, and we're able to help 1,700 plus students to enroll and receive all different types of services. One of the biggest thing I would like us to really think about is who lack fixed, adequate, and nighttime residency. Meaning, if you have your grandson with you, I'm going to use the example we talked about, who are sharing housing, right? You can kick him or her anytime because they don't have a legal binding. But if you rent a house, you have a what do you call them, a lease. Nobody can kick you out. They have to give you the warning and eviction notice and all of that. So therefore, when you are lacking a certain legal safety, and that's what makes them more vulnerable. Go ahead.
Okay. We also have the migrant students are eligible, which is almost similar to who is eligible. Those are for children and youth who lack a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence. They are sharing the housing of others due to loss of housing, economic hardship, or similar reason. They're living in motels, hotels, trailer park, or camping ground due to lack of alternative, adequate accommodation. They're living in emergency or transitional shelters, living in a public or private place not designated for or regularly used as an accommodation, living in cars, parks, abandoned buildings, standard housing, bus or train station, or similar setting.
And we are emphasizing that one because the migrant families really have a direct correlation of how we eat our fruit and vegetables and how we eat our groceries, where we go and buy them, right? Those that are legal, they have an actual documentation, they come here with their family and they work. So that applies to them also because they are constantly moving. It's half of a school year, they may be in Immokalee in a farm, and then they will move to North Carolina or Georgia for following semester. So, which means that they're constantly moving, which means they're lacking certain continuity of education. So we jump in and we try to provide services to help them to stay in one school, try to understand importance of education. They fall under the homelessness category as well. And this is also what I wanted to talk about is anyone who is not in the presence of parent or legal guardian are classified as unaccompanied youth. That's a federal definition. Often what happens is that the parents will give a power of attorney to somebody else. It's called temporary power of attorney to make an educational and medical decision. And that is great. At least somebody is accountable for it, but they are not the legal guardian. So they may not necessarily receive the services that the children might be needing, right? So for example, what do you mean by services? Services may be they need a transportation. What we're going to talk about soon is just having that connection with the school counselors and who makes that decision, educational decision. Like if they have IEP, who attends in the IEP meeting? Because parents have given the power of attorney to grandparents. So we're going to talk about that too.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the next is the McKinney-Vento District Liaison, which is where we come. It ensures that children and youth in homeless situations are identified, enrolled, and linked with educational and health services. We inform parent, guardian, or youth of educational and parent involvement opportunities. We ensure posting of public notice of educational right and resolve dispute. Ensure students are provided free school meal. Inform student, guardian, or youth of transportation services, including to the school of origin. We provide linkage to identify educational and social service needs.
So, and when we talk about the jargon is a school of origin, do we know what that means? Well, it means that when the family is identified as experiencing homelessness this year and they're attending, let's say, Naples High School, because of the various circumstances, the family moved to Lily Zone, somewhere else they're sharing housing, we don't want the child to be moving from Naples and going to Lily High School. So what happens is, once they identify, we provide, we meaning the CCPS will, under the McKinney-Vento Act, will provide a transportation to school of origin. And let's say school of origin is so important, let's say student, and the families are moving, students remaining in school, so what happens the following year? So we also work closely with the student registration department, and we reproject the student to school of origin, meaning this year they stay in the same school, next year they come back and go to their own school again. So what it does, it creates a sense of community, sense of belongings. They may be part of athletes, or they're part of other school activities. So it gives him sense of purpose, sense of belongings is so important for their learning. So school of origin means that.
Okay,
You want me to tell you? Okay, you've been talking, so let me say. So
go ahead.
under the homeless education program, these are some of the services that they're eligible for, right? So free meal is important part, because without the meal, the kids will not be able to function. Transportation, we talked about, and I would say about 75 to 80% of our elementary and middle schools require uniform. Not every family can afford it, so we provide that. Shoes and clothing are important, and this is something that we have started to implement a couple years ago, cap and gowns. Proud moment. So as soon as we know who's going to be graduating, we give them incentive. Okay, we're going to get you a cap and gowns, which means we're able to communicate with them, and they are graduating. And last year, Sheila went and presented their diploma. It's a beautiful, beautiful feeling. School supplies, backpacks, hygienes, assisting with the test waivers. That means anytime the kiddos are taking ACTs or ACTs, they will get waiver from us. So they don't have to pay for that one, which is fantastic. Tutoring as needed, which is also kind of challenging, because these days almost some of the schools have after-school program, and with the people coming and tutoring them, which is great. But sometimes they need special tutoring services.
Okay. The identification part. 67% of students said they were uncomfortable telling people at school about their homelessness and asking for help. And that's where I really come in, because I emphasize for the parent, this being in that situation is a situation, it's not who you are. So some of them identify themselves, I am homeless, and that's something I'm trying to educate them, because it can happen to any one of us. So identification tips: Don't say homeless. Instead, use descriptive languages. Are you staying somewhere temporarily? Did you have to leave your home? Where would you go if you couldn't stay here? So we use those phrases in order to make them comfortable, so we can provide them with services as needed. Otherwise, they're not gonna say they are homeless.
And our experience been, no one is gonna come and say, I'm homeless, I need services. A good example I often use is you have a child in your classroom sleeping or not paying attention or being disruptive. Rather than just taking and sending it to principal's office, spend time, talk to them, say, what's going on? And child will tell you, last night I couldn't fall asleep, my mom and dad were fighting, and my mom left. That's one of the federal requirement, is that the domestic violence situation. Or I've also heard like, yeah, we just moved in with somebody and I was sleeping in a couch and my brother came and we tried to sleep together, it didn't work, and I'm up and I'm tired. Or I have also heard like, we were running late and we didn't have anything to eat and we're hungry and I'm tired. I mean, those are the social dynamic that we see it. And I know I have two little ones myself. She thinks she's a teenager, but she's 11, she's 5th grader, and I have a son who is 3rd grader, who just turned 9. Every day, I tell them I love them, and I tell them what they need, and I'm there to provide whatever they need to be successful in school. And we struggle, right? Imagine those who are having a challenging times. They don't have enough to eat. They don't have financial means to support what they need. How are they going to function? And I think I'm jumping in, but I wanted to also share another big story, which is 80% of our identified population, that almost 1,800 students, 80% are sharing housing. It means they're living with somebody. Out of that 80%, 50% are newly arrived in this country. They may be undocumented, maybe they have proper documentation, but they don't have language skills. I'm a pretty smart guy. I did my undergraduate in this country, did my graduate work in this country. I speak the language okay. I understand what you're telling me. I try to conceptualize what it means to me, but I don't understand the meaning of it. It has so much articulation and it has so much different way of communicating. I have a hard time navigating certain resources out there in the community. Just go to online and you can find these resources. I can't even figure that out. Just imagine somebody who does not speak the language, fearful of not having proper documentation, right? They may not even have a phone, but everything's online. Imagine how they're able to function. They can't. And they are the one who need help, but they are unable to come forward and say, I need help. So it's just something to think about, and we live in such a beautiful environment. That's why I came to Naples. I love Naples. I wanted to get tan. I got some tan. I love going to beach. It's beautiful, right? But right here, we do have some of the struggles that we are seeing throughout the country, which is homelessness issues. And we'll talk about it. We have time.
And on top of it, hurricane.
Yeah, that's next one, I think. Go ahead.
Okay, the federal requirement. Enrollment specialists, school-based and district liaison must provide families with a copy of the homeless education brochure, which outlines student rights and homeless education. Enrollment specialists and school staff must notify the district liaison of homeless education of the student identified, enrolled, and/or coded in student information system. Student identified as homeless under the McKinney-Vento Act must be coded in focus and a need assessment completed and sent to the district liaison.
So this is a federal requirement. So we are CCPS employees. We work for the district. But our salary, I think, or it's a grant funded, it's from DOE, Department of Education. And there are certain requirements. The requirements are precisely this. We should have equal access to homeless student as would be for non-homeless student, which makes it difficult if you are not, or if I'm not training the enrollers, student registration people. So once we train them what to look for, how to identify them, and they will let us know. And next thing is that as soon as they are identified, we internally go and we have an internal system where we put certain code. It's called coding. And then we do the assessment. Assessment is ever changing. Every day, every week, every month, need might be changing. Assessment will tell us, I need a transportation in the afternoon because in the morning my friend is driving me to school. So once we know that, we request that transportation accordingly. Those are some of the needs that will go. I think we talked about that one, but go
Yes,
ahead.
we did.
Yep. Wait a second. Okay, go ahead, read this one. This is the, so we talked about the School of Origin, why it is so important. So we determine, we work closely with the families or individual, school counselors, school staff to determine the best interest. Go ahead, you want to read this one?
Okay.
LEA stands for Lead Educational Agency. That's the, each school, that's what it means, sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, we shall presume that keeping the student in the school of origin is in the student's best interest, unless contrary to the request of the parent, guardian, or unaccompanied youth. Consider student-centered factors, including the impact of mobility on achievement, education, health, and safety, length of commute, relationship, and participation in activities. For preschool children, consider attachment to teachers, availability, and quality of services in the new area and travel time. We give priority to the request of the parent and guardian, and we also give priority to the request of the unaccompanied youth.
In other words, we work collectively. If we don't, Lucila and I do not make a decision, solo decision. So keeping a school of origin is important because sometimes we have families living in a youth haven, right? They're one of the organizations here, and attending a school in Dunbar High School in Lee County. So we provide transportation. So it's a collaborative between two counties. So CCPS will coordinate with the Lee County School Transportation, and we drive them to the county line, and the other bus comes to the county line, pick them up, drop them off, and vice versa. So all of this coordination is done by us. So that way the kiddos will be successful in school. I think that's important. Sometime though, unaccompanied youth, so he talks about requests by unaccompanied youth. Any age can be unaccompanied youth, and I just want that to be clear. But if you are 16 years of age and you are not, and I think we have a slide. Do we have a slide on that one?
Not yet.
Okay. So if you are 16 years of age or older, and you are couch surfing, and we meet with them and we determine they qualify as an unaccompanied youth, homeless, then we issue a federally required a document. It's called Unaccompanied Youth Certificate. And that certificate would allow them to access different resources, including health care. They can make their own educational and medical decision, and they can be labeled as independent student. That is unaccompanied youth. So let's say if the child is 16 years or older, we talk to them, we communicate with them, but ultimate decision would be collectively, but that's what we do. Why is the best interest factor? Go ahead.
The best interest factors: continuity of instruction, age of the child or youth, safety of the child or youth, length of stay at the shelter or location, likely area where family will find permanent housing, impact of commute on education, school placement of siblings, student need for special programs, and time remaining in the school.
Does that make sense? I know we're kind of reading, but I would like us to kind of ask questions if it doesn't make sense, because we're so familiar with just talking about this thing. Then we'll talk about the causes of homelessness. We have plenty of time, but we have a couple more slides. So best interest factors are really designed after, and I think it's 2010, there was a big spike of homelessness in state of Florida, 2010. Anybody can get what happened 2010?
Haiti?
Haiti earthquake. So natural disaster caused a lot of families to migrate, come over here. So we had about 1,400 plus students were identified in 2010. That number went down. Then went up in 2017. Why? 2017. Irma was close to 1,400 again. Then it went down for 1 year, a little bit, it was 1,300 something. Then 2020 went high. Why? COVID. COVID has caused, initially 2020 number went down because all the schools were closed. Right? When the schools were closed, number went down. And the 2021-22 year, number went up. Because now where schools are open, because of COVID, a lot of people lost their jobs, and they are sharing housing. They are living in a car, living in shelters, and all of that. So number went up. But the beautiful thing about, not beautiful, yeah, it is a beautiful thing, is that we were able to identify through transportation, bus. The bus drivers are so keen to know that who lives in what area. And when the families are not there or the kiddo is not coming to school, they'll let us know. So we're able to identify them. Another big factor is that they get free meal, but right before COVID, there was no free meal. So we were able to identify more students. But after COVID, everybody received free meal, so which was harder to identify who needed services. And this year, this school year, started really slow, and I was so grateful. And then Irma happened, and a lot of displacement.
Ian.
Oh, Ian. It's Irma. Ian happened, and then it was so devastating to see the families in Sadalan area and this area just been affected, and we did not have enough shelters and nowhere to go. And so we start putting families in hotels, in the motels, whatever community people would provide us some fundings, and because we don't have a federal grant to pay for that. So the community foundation did a wonderful support by giving us enough money so we can put them in a hotel and motel. And then work very closely with the Red Cross, and we opened the North Regional Collier Park up in Livingston, 15,000 Livingston. We had a lot of families who were there. We bus kiddos from there to different locations. So natural disaster often has this also interesting component to it. You ready for it? It brought families together. And our unaccompanied youth numbers are lower this year. That means even they are struggling, they are sharing housing, but family units are together. And that's a beautiful thing for me. Yeah, we talked about that.
We talk about the transportation.
This is, yeah, Elia, that's
Yes.
one of the things. Okay, go ahead. This one is a good
The
one.
trauma informed.
You're the counselor.
Trauma informed care. Homelessness is inherently traumatic and frequently violent. LEA should train staff on the traumatic effect of homelessness and specific strategies to provide trauma-informed care. The LEA should ensure school personnel consider issues related to homelessness prior to taking disciplinary action.
So, in other words, Sila and I work from cafeteria staff to principals. So if you call any school and say, hey, do you know Hemi? They will say yes, because we are the homeless students advocate. So we train principals, APs, and any of the school administrators in every single schools about what not to do or what to do. And a few times a year, we train all the counselors, because counselors are regularly interacting with our students. So our counselors are aware of signs and symptoms of homelessness, and they are the one who do the need assessment that we talked about earlier. So each school has a designated school homeless liaison. They are the counselors, and they are the one we communicate with. Even though it's just two of us, but we are able to work with everybody because of we have developed that collaborative approach. And often we talk about this, if the kiddos are missing school, and then the principals are immediately calling us and trying to identify the barriers. Why are the kiddos are not coming to school? Our program is the only program that provides out-of-zone transportation. Let's say if the kiddo happened to move somewhere else and not able to come to school, that's what lagging them to be tardy or not being absent in school, we provide transportation. So that helps them tremendously. So we collaborate with all of that. So anytime there's any types of disciplinary action is ready to be implemented, they call me, they call us, and my favorite line is, being a homeless is not a privilege. Homeless students should be treated exactly the same way as my son or my daughter. Is that making sense what I'm saying? Because often, oh, I'm homeless, so therefore I can do X, Y, and Z and get away with it. No. The expectation is exactly the same. And you will get extra services to be participating fully in school, but you are treated the same, you are equal. That's what it means. Next
Let's
one.
conclude.
This is okay. So, three things I want to talk about today now. This is my 6th year at Collier County Public School as a district liaison, and this year our number has spiked up to close to 17, almost 1,800 students been identified as experiencing homelessness. So you may ask, and there's an article here, and I talked about that too, why do we have a larger number of families been identified this year? Any guess?
Better at finding them?
Yeah, identifying process has become easier because one, I have an extra 2 people working diligently, training and really sharing what it means to be part of making an evento, right? And we're in almost every single schools, training every single counselors and school staff so they are aware of it. We're working every single enrollers, the registration staff, they're able to understand and identify that. And then, boom, Ian happened. So Ian also caused a lot of dysfunctionality too. That's one area. Another big area I am seeing in Collier, we do not have enough shelters. Shelters are often full. The families are living in the street, or they are in a car, or they're sharing housing. Why are they sharing housing? One would think, right? Not enough homes to have their own affordable houses. So what happens? If you cannot afford a house, but you don't want to move somewhere else because your kiddos are living and going to school in this environment, you sacrifice certain things and try to live with other family. Sharing housing, that means they're homeless because sharing housing, they're sharing housing because they don't have their own house. They don't have their own house because they cannot afford it. So it's a vicious cycle. So last 4-5 years, housing market is going up. As the housing market going up, so is the homeless population going up simultaneously. Is there a correlation? Perhaps. But I'm not an expert on housing market versus academic success, but I do tell you as a sociologist and district liaison that this year, a lot of families have moved to different counties while trying to maintain their kiddos in Collier County. So we have provided transportation back and forth. So what causes homelessness? I think one of the biggest thing I believe is housing crisis is the big one because people cannot afford it, but they cannot really take the kiddos in the 5th year, last year in the elementary school. They're not gonna just take the child and go somewhere else, so they're gonna be sharing housing. Another big one I believe, what I have seen is mental health is a big component to it. Some of the substance abuse is also increasing a lot. I have seen that is also causing a lot of dysfunctionality within the society. And another big one I'm seeing is the domestic violence. It's a correlation again. And I have also seen and worked tremendously with the deportation. When the family is deported, one or another, the kids are left behind. And those are also experiencing some of the challenges. So there is no single reason what causes people to be homeless. There's a wide range of causes, different signs and symptoms we have to be aware of. Another big thing I wanted to share with you is what can community do? I think that's important parts too. Keep on doing what you're doing. This is exactly what we need. We need someone like you to hear and say, Collier, we have this many students, but they're not really homeless under definition, but they are certainly struggling. Then start thinking about, okay, what can we do, our community can do? Maybe start writing a letter, writing campaign to, I don't know, to somebody, I don't know, Pasadena, I don't know, somebody just out there in the community, or just educate the people too, like it can happen to anyone. Homelessness does not discriminate. And I was thinking, and I was reflecting, when I moved here from Minnesota in 2016, I was looking for a house, couldn't afford it, looking for a job, couldn't find it, and I had a car, was about to break down. I have 2 little kiddos. Thank God my wife got a job right away, but I was looking. I'm an educated young man. well, old man. But either way, so I couldn't find it. Oh, and then I'm a U.S. citizen. I couldn't find a job. So again, so it's just, I think often we do the normalizing. Normalization becomes a way of life. What we see, what we hear, and then we start to believe and conceptualize those thoughts, which is great. Like, I'm looking at Miss Sheila over here, and what's the number up in Immokalee? How many students?
About 322.
Those are the numbers up in Immokalee area. I believe the numbers should be double or triple of that. I believe that. The reason being is almost 92% of the population in Immokalee are living and sharing with somebody, or they are living in the farm apartment, the farmhouse. Yes.
Trailer park.
So normalizing or generalizing or normalizing is, oh, that's how the family's always been living. Oh, that's okay, they've been living like a 3 generation like this. So we often start to believe in those things, and then we start to accept that as being the truth. Maybe it's truth to them, but they are not receiving the services the kiddo needs. And so, yeah, I think that's basically it from my end, but anything, we are here. Yes.
Before I'll get to you, Bill, but I wanted to say thank you, and I think it's absolutely remarkable that 2 people are doing this job. When you just think, I mean, I don't know how you, one, deal with all the training, and then all the buses that you have to coordinate, that must be awful. Anyway, congratulations on a big and very important job. The other thing I wanted to say is that I was very aware, am I still on the mic? I think I am. I was very aware of the fact that if you're hungry, or if you're homeless, or you're sleeping on a couch and not in your own bed in your own home, that's got to make it very hard to be a student and to focus on school. That would take over. And so all of these additional services that they are trying to provide, once they identify the student is a big job in itself, is just pretty remarkable. So terrific. I'm so glad. The program, by the way, is funded by the Department of Education, but they are employees of the school system, of Collier County Public School System. Now, Bill.
I have about 6 questions, so
Yes.
I'll spread them out. A lot of times the solution is right in front of us, but the ability to get to the solution has got the barriers. The school district owns a lot of vacant land. FEMA's supplying housing for emergencies. They're supplying housing for immigrants on the southern border. Wouldn't it be an amiable solution to get FEMA housing units and put them on school property and create villages for homeless families?
I agree with you 100%. Yes, solution is right in front of us, but who are our advocates? And I think that's what I was saying earlier, is that what are you doing right now, and carry this message to whoever is going to be our advocate? Yes. Ideally, I would love to see that, but is it possible? I'm not sure. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, Bill's going to have a whole bunch of questions, but anyone else over here?
First of all, thank you for coming today, and thank you for doing this important work. I know it's incredibly complicated. And so my question is, I wonder if the anecdotal information that you have about these students and what happens to them once they age out of school, there's plenty of that, right? But have you or the program done any longitudinal studies to look at how these young people who experience homelessness do, either with postgraduate education or continued education, careers, how they do in their relationships of marriage and so on, and other markers of success as somebody grows up? What can you tell us about that?
Not a whole lot, because, can you hear me? I guess not.
Yes.
Okay. Not a whole lot because the study has not, no one has done the longitudinal study yet. I know there are, Department of Education is partnering with Florida State University, trying to gather some data, what happens after they graduate from high school. I can tell you a few things. If you go back to Google and Google my name, there is a great story that when the kiddos are unaccompanied youth, they issued a certificate from me. My name, my phone number is there. Every semester I get phone call, and I have to write a verification letter to those who are continue to go to higher education. I have a handful of kiddos who are going to FGCU, and I have to verify them every semester. Following that study would be great, but these kiddos are resilient. Once they are able to finish the high school, their path is a lot better than one could ever expect. So longitudinal study, I'm a sociologist, would be ideal, but again, how are you going to get the data? Data are often manipulated based on what the outcome you want to find. And so I did actually wrote an abstract to try to do the similar thing, and I was not successful. So there are some movement, but I have not seen any data or any information yet. See you.
You mentioned earlier that the shelters were oftentimes filled. Where are these shelters? Do they take in the whole family? And can we get more shelters, at least temporarily, if affordable housing is out of the question?
I love that question. Sila, you want to answer or you want me to jump in?
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Shelters are, we don't have enough shelters in Collier County. Some of the shelters that I work with, and I think those are the only shelters we have, which is St. Matthew's House. Okay, that's one. There's emergency shelter, and then they go to a transitional shelter there. And they have another shelter run by St. Matthew's up in Immokalee called Friendship House. That's also limited. And St. Matthew also has apartments. It's called Wolf's Apartments, which are also run by St. Matthew's. They are full. And so that's St. Matthew's area, right? And then you have the abused woman shelter. They have one up here, right here in Naples, right? And then they have one they just opened a couple years ago in Immokalee. They are full too. And so then you have Providence House, which is you have to be a female, a child has to be under 10, but if you have a child who's a male who happen to be 11, then you don't have anywhere to go. So it's crazy, but we don't have enough shelters. Wouldn't it be ideal to have more shelters? Yes, but who is going to advocate for it? Does that make sense what I'm saying? Yeah.
I've been involved with early learning child care for 22 years since I retired here in Naples. And you mentioned that your population starts with pre-K, which is basically 4 or 5. Yes. What's being done about homeless children under 4 years old?
Very good. Good question. That's your area, but that's...
Well, in Collier County, the ones that are in pre-K, they fall almost the same as the kindergarten. They live with their parent and they reside with family, and we offer them to go to pre-K without that, because pre-K is not
compulsory.
It's not an I'm sorry, I apologize. Pre-K is not really a necessity for some parents. It is offered. So therefore, we do not have the same program for them as kinder, but we do offer them the assistance to apply for pre-K free of charge.
So,
Yeah, the Head Start.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think what you're asking is what we do as a homeless is anyone who do not qualify, like some families are working, both parents are working, and they do not qualify free
For the Head Start.
Head Start program. But if they happen to be living with somebody else, they fall under the homelessness, which would, then I will verify there is a certificate, I certify them, and that would allow them to enroll and get accepted in the program. So what we're doing is we're providing the same services to them to enroll in school so they will get acclimated. And transportation as well.
Hi, my name is Bill Curry. I'm from St. Matthew's House and came today, I saw the presentation, came today to just say a huge thank you to you for the work that you do with us through the transportation, tutoring, a variety of things. Like to the rest of the audience, they really, truly do make an impact in the lives of the kids that stay at our shelter. So I wanted to say that. And then to your question as well, right now there's 38 families on our waiting list to get in. That represents about 92 children within those 38 families. Probably about 40% of them are under the age of 5. And so we are trying to build more shelter space and more apartments. In fact, tomorrow at the county commissioners meeting, we're asking for a zoning change of land that we already own so that we can put more density on the land that we own just off of Airport Road there for 28 more units of affordable housing that would be for families coming through our shelter programs and then graduates of our addiction recovery program. I'm not here to advertise St. Matthew's House, but you asked the question about affordable housing. One other resource would be if you look at, there's a unique thing in Austin, Texas called Community First. And Bill, this goes back to your question. Look up Community First. There's a 60-minute segment from just in the last few weeks where they have taken tiny homes, RVs, a variety of things, and they've got maybe 550 or 600 units on designated land where they built a neighborhood specifically for people that were struggling through homelessness.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Bill. I'm glad to see you here.
You mentioned the public schools. What about the charter schools? Are they obligated to participate in these programs? I mean, we are a state with a lot of charter schools, and we fund them with our dollars. Are they
Yes.
required?
Well, I see the requirement, I think it's a different way of looking at it, but yes, every charter schools are under the Collier County board policy mandated, right? So they are always reporting to CCPS. So we work with all the charter schools, and when their enrollment are a little different, let's say if they are lacking certain documents, they may enroll kiddos without our help. But yes, we provide the equal services to them as needed. We send the backpacks and the school supplies and anything and everything to a charter school as we do to other public schools. Is that help, kind of?
As a church, I mean, I know we do things like before school, collect backpacks and school supplies. I assume that helps maybe people like you or your population that you serve. But what would be like a simple program as a church that we could start and implement on some sort of regular basis? Like I'm thinking at another church I went to, once a week we got together and packed lunches that the kids could take home on Fridays and have food over the weekend. Y'all are probably familiar with, easy, fairly simple things that we could do to help.
Well, one thing I found out during a lot of parents that are living in the hotel, for example, we provide them a lot of assistance. We pay for 1 week. Perhaps somebody can build a foundation. They can cover for another week for a family, and that will be accountable for. And we also, pardon me? No, not at all. Nothing is easy, but it's just the thought behind it.
Yeah.
We get into a group of 5, and then we say, okay, we pay for that family for a week. Or we buy some gas card, which is what some of our parents are facing. They have money to eat, but often they don't have gas to do the basic need, because we do provide the school supply, we do provide a hygiene kit, we do provide a free meal, but we do not provide a gas card or to have
And I was gonna.
But you provide the free meals on the school day only?
on the school day only.
Only, yeah.
Yeah. What I proposed this to our nutrition services. My kids, they get free meal too, because this year everybody's getting free meal. My own kid, right? And then they go and buy cookies and different things. It costs money. So I proposed the idea of like somebody should adopt a school or 2 schools and raise some money and say, okay, this is for homeless kiddos. They can put those money in their lunch card, and they can go and have cookies just like Johnny over here. I thought that was a good idea, because that way that kind of makes them feel better. Another thing I thought about was the dating. Think about this one. You're homeless, you don't have a whole lot of money, somebody asks you. So in the past, what I have done is the people like you have bought a movie passes, and then we'll provide them to the movie pass, 2 movie passes, so that way they can ask date. Another thing, what we do, we have some money available from a different organization, gives us some money. How about the grad bash? Ever heard of that one? That was new to me. Basically, when the kiddos are about to graduate, they go to somewhere else to, I guess, party? I don't know.
Go to Disney.
Yeah, and that costs money. So we provide some of the resources for that one from private funding. The biggest one I always request is, if you can provide a gas card, that's like what Sheila was talking about, that is a tremendous help. And also some of the grocery cards, because community, before I started working in this field, I thought the same way. Homeless family, they need a backpack and they need school supplies. Oh, they need socks and they need underwear. That's what I thought. Yes, they do. But those are covered by different grants. But if you can get a Publix card or a Target, it gives them sense of belonging, a sense of empowerment. They can go and buy their own socks, those kinds of things. I think just understanding who they are, I think is the biggest thing. Yeah. That didn't help, did it?
Anyone else? Bill, you still have questions?
Sheila, I thought there was a take-home food pack in the school program somehow.
Some school do.
Some schools still do.
Oh,
Every
okay.
Friday, they give them a
Yeah,
a pack.
okay. I used to go to sheriff briefings, and we heard from different departments and so forth. And one of the briefings, and I'm going back a few years, but they were talking 1,100 homeless school children. I don't know if you overlap with the sheriff's department on homeless identification of locations and so forth. They claimed they knew where every child was located.
That number must have come from us, from me.
Okay.
The school district is the only one who does the numbers.
But they felt just like they know where the gangs are, they do know where the homeless children are. Is that mapped and matrixed within the school system database?
I don't know. The reason I'm hesitant is I don't know how they know how many kiddos are out there and where they are,
Yeah.
because they're constantly moving to living
Now,
with a different household.
Which comes to your point of school of origin.
Yep.
Isn't the other hidden motive the fact that when you take them out of Naples High and they go to Lely, their number stays in the base, that then decreases the graduation rate for Naples High? Just like it affects Chatillon that gets low scores because it's a transit school, and they get penalized because half their students migrate.
It can, but if the kiddo is actually moving from there to Lely and graduating, it's better for the Lely than Naples High. But we're not really worrying about that component. We're worrying about the school stability.
Statistical anomaly
Yep.
goes all the way even to colleges.
Yep.
And it's an unfair statistical analysis.
Yep.
And I'm glad we just fixed it.
Don't know. Yeah. It's because there are so many different variables, and we have to really think about those variables too. Okay, so why is this child going here versus not staying here, right? That's important part to understand. And then another thing is that, okay, our graduation rate is, I think it's at 91, 92%, but with the one kiddo moving this way over here may not really influence that data overall in the 40, 50,000 kiddos. But often we kind of try to operate under the statistical analysis or data driven, which is great, but it's a very small percent we're talking about.
Yes.
It's more of a comment than a question. You guys are superheroes. As a person who's spent my life in education, these people are amazing. I'm thinking about all the beautiful lives that you are, reaching out a helping hand to, and how sophisticated it is, because nobody wants to be homeless, nobody wants to be needy, nobody wants to have, a handout. So it's subtle and important and vital work you're doing. At first I was going to ask the question, do you have any data, a collection of their emotional, physical, or academic advancement because of your program? And then I thought, probably not. You probably don't have funds or resources to do that, but I'm betting that you're making a huge difference in the lives of not only the students that you serve, but their families. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. There is a data because most of our students are either in special education, they have IEP or 504, and everything is kind of tracked through that process. Thank you, because people like you are the one who really makes the impact, a greater impact on our families. Another thing I wanted to tell you before we end is, Sila and I wear another hat too, which is I totally forgot to mention, which is foster care. Because homeless and foster care, both of us are the liaison for homeless and foster care, and we have a large number of foster kiddos in and out, and we spend 50% of our time in foster care. We just talked about 50% of homeless. Just imagine some of the things we go through with the foster care. And so, thank you. This is...
my missionaries, and that's just what comes to mind when I think of the two of you, because you really are, and the rest of your team, your co-workers, are really doing, it is really scut work that you have to do. And I think that any of us that have been impacted with education ourselves as administrators, we know, we can appreciate what you're going through each day, and that you love it. That's what keeps you going, I'm sure, just seeing some little bit of change, it's just that little light. But it's tremendous work, and you are making an impact, and I'm not always sure that the parents and families can appreciate it at the time. So you may not get the verbal thanks from them, but you'd get it from the rest of any community. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you so much.
I think on that note, I would definitely say we can come to an end if you have private conversation afterward. I know Bill still has 12 questions, but I think you two are doing wonderful work. I don't know how you do it all. I really don't. I'm glad that we have you here. I think you need more people helping you, and just keep it up. You're wonderful.
Thank you. And thank you for as well for you as a community who's interested in knowing what is going on, because the interest matters.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Feel free to chat with them. Thank you for coming.